Postscript. And sometime, make the time to drive out west into County Clare along the flaggy shore in September or October when the wind and the light are working off each other, so that the ocean on one side is wild with foam and glitter, and inland among stones the surface of a slate-grey lake is lit by the earthed lightning of a flock of swans, their feathers ruffed and ruffling, white on white, their fully grown, headstrong-looking heads, tucked or cresting or busy under water. Useless to think you'll park and capture it more thoroughly. You are neither here nor there. A hurry through which known and strange things pass, as big soft buffetings come at the car sideways and catch the heart off guard and blow it open. A kite for Michael and Christopher. All through that Sunday afternoon, a kite flew above Sunday, a tightened drumhead, an armful of blown chaff. I'd seen it grey and slippy in the making. I'd tapped it when it dried out, white and stiff. I'd tied the bows of newspaper along its 6-foot tail. But now it was far up, like a small black lark, and now it dragged, as if the bellied string were a wet rope hauled upon to lift a shoal. My friend says that the human soul is about the weight of a snipe, yet the soul at anchor there, the string that sags and ascends, way like a furrow assumed into the heavens. Before the kite plunges down into the wood, and this line goes useless, take it in your 2 hands, boys, and feel the strumming, rooted, long-tailed pull of grief. You were born fit for it. Stand in here in front of me and take the strain. No second Troy. Why should I blame her that she filled my days with misery, or that she would of late have taught to ignorant men most violent ways, or hurled the little streets upon the great, had they but courage equal to desire? What could have made her peaceful with a mind that nobleness made simple as a fire, with beauty like a tightened bow, a kind that is not natural in an age like this, being high and solitary and most stern? Why, what could she have done, being what she is? Was there another Troy for her to burn? To a friend whose work has come to nothing. Now all the truth is out. Be secret and take defeat from any brazen throat. For how can you compete, being honour bred, with one who, were it proved he lies, were neither shamed in his own nor in his neighbour's eyes? Bred to a harder thing than triumph. Turn away, and like a laughing string, whereupon mad fingers play amid a place of stone, be secret and exult, because of all things known. That is most difficult. This is Deadalus and Icarus. Deadalus now had come to detest his protracted exile in Crete, and was longing to visit his native country again. But his way was barred by the sea. King Minos can block my escape by land or water, he sighed. The air at least is still open. My path lies there. He is Lord of the world, but not Lord of the sky. The air at least is still open. My path lies there. He is Lord of the world, but not Lord of the sky. So saying, he put his mind to techniques unexplored before and altered the laws of nature. He carefully layered some feathers, the smallest to start with, the shorter positioned next to the longer. You'd think they had grown like that, as sometimes rustic panpipes rise in a gradual slope with their reeds of unequal length. And then he bound them with twine in the middle and wax at the bottom. This neatly compacted plumage he curved in a gentle camber to imitate real birds' wings. His young son, Icarus, standing beside him, and little aware of the threat to himself he was touching, smiled as he caught at the feathers fluttering in the breeze. And now and again he would carelessly soften the yellow wax with his thumb, enjoying his game as he meddled and interfered with his father's wonderful work. But soon the finishing touches were deftly laid, and Deadalus balanced his aged body on both of his wings, then beat at the air and hovered, suspended. Next he instructed his son, "Now Icarus, listen carefully. Keep to the middle way. If you fly too low, the water will clog your wings. If you fly too high, they'll be scorched by fire. Fly between sea and sun. No need to determine your course by Boötes the bear or Orion's naked sword. Like a sailor, simply follow my lead." As he gave his pupil his flying orders, he fitted the wings on the boy's inexperienced shoulders, and while he did it, the old man's cheeks were wet with tears, and his hands were trembling in fatherly fear. Then, kissing the lips of his darling son for the very last time, he rose on his wings and flew in front, as afraid for the lad as a bird escorting her fledgling out of her mountain nest to float on the breezes. "Follow," he cried as he taught him the skills that would prove his downfall. Moving his own 2 wings, he kept looking back at his sons. They were spied by a fisherman dangling his catch on his quivering rod, a shepherd at rest on his crook, and a ploughman steering his ploughshare. All watched in amazement, thinking, they certainly must be gods to fly through the air. Now Juno's island, Samos, was coming up on the left. Delos and Paros were far behind them. Lebynthos lay to the right with the honey-rich island, Calymne. When all this adventurous flying went to Icarus's head, he ceased to follow his leader. He'd fallen in love with the sky and soared up higher and higher. The scorching rays of the sun grew closer and softened the fragrant wax which fastened his plumage. The wax dissolved, and as Icarus flapped his naked arms, deprived of the wings which had caught the air that was buoying them upwards, "Father," he shouted again and again. But the boy and his shouting were drowned in the blue-green main which is called the Icarian Sea. His unhappy father, no longer a father, called out, "Icarus, where are you, Icarus? Where on earth shall I find you?" "Icarus," he kept crying, and then he caught sight of the wings in that water. Deadalus cursed the skill of his hands and buried his dear son's corpse in a grave. The land where he lies is known as Icaria. Sinéad Morrissey. It's a poem called "And Forgive Us Our Trespasses," of which the first is love. The sad, unrepeatable fact that the loves we shouldn't foster burrow faster and linger longer than sanctioned kinds can. Loves that thrive on absence, on lack of return, or worse, on harm, are unkillable, Father. They do not die in us, and you know how we've tried. Loves nursed inexplicably on thoughts of sex, a return to touched places, a backwards glance, a sigh. They come back like the tide. They are with us at the terminus when cancer catches us. They have never been away. Forgive us the people we love, their dragnet influence, those disallowed to us, those who frighten us, those who stay on uninvited in our lives and every night revisit us, accept from us the inappropriate by which our dreams and daily scenes stay separate. HÖFN. The 3-tongued glacier has begun to melt. What will we do, they ask, when boulder milt comes wallowing across the delta flats and the miles-deep shag ice makes its move? I saw it, rigid and rock-set from above, undead grey-gristed earth pelt, eon scruff, and feared its coldness that still seemed enough to ice-block the plain window dimmed with breath, deep freeze the seep of adamantine tilth, and every warm, mouth-watering word of mouth. District and Circle. Tunes from a tin whistle underground curled up a corridor I'd be walking down to where I knew I was always going to find my watcher on the tiles, Cap by his side, his fingers perked, his two eyes eyeing me in an unaccusing look I'd not avoid, or not just yet, since both were out to sea for ourselves. As the music larked and capered, I'd trigger and untrigger a hot coin held at the ready. But now my gaze was lowered, for was our traffic not in recognition? Accorded passage, I would repocket and nod, and he, still eyeing me, would also nod. Posted, eyes front, along the dreamy ramparts of escalators ascending and descending to a monotonous slight rocking in the works, we were moved along, upstanding. Elsewhere, underneath, an engine powered, rumbled, quickened, evened, quieted. The white tiles gleamed. In passages that flowed with drafts from cooler tunnels, I missed the light of all-overing, long-since mysterious day. Parks at lunchtime, where the sunners lay on body-heated mown grass, regardless. A resurrection scene, minutes before the resurrection. Habitués of their garden of delights, of staggered summer. Another level down, the platform thronged. I re-entered the safety of numbers, a crowd half straggle-ravelled and half strung like a human chain. The pushy newcomers jostling and purling underneath the vault, on their marks to be first through the doors. Street loud, then succumbing to herd quiet. Had I betrayed or not myself or him? Always new to me, always familiar, this unrepentant, now repentant turn as I stood waiting, glad of a first tremor. Then, caught up in the now or never whelm of one and all the full length of the train. Stepping onto it across the gap, onto the carriage metal, I reached to grab the stubby black roof wart and take my stand from planted ball of heel to heel of hand. A sweet traction and heavy down slump stayed me. I was on my way, well girded, yet on edge, spot-rooted, buoyed, aloof, listening to the dwindling noises off, my back to the unclosed door, the platform empty, and wished it could have lasted. That long between times pause before the bulge and glaze over, when any forwardness was unwelcome, and bodies readjusted, blindsided to themselves and other bodies. So deeper into it, crowd swept, strap hanging, my lofted arm a swivel like a flail, my father's glazed face in my own waning and craning. Again the growl of shutting doors, the jolt and one-off treble of iron on iron, then a long centrifugal haulage of speed through every dragging socket, and so by night and day to be transported through galleried earth with them. The only relic of all that I belonged to, hurtled forward, reflecting in a window mirror-backed by blasted, weeping rock walls, flicker-lit. Sadness. It was everywhere, in the streets and houses, on farms and now in the air itself. It had come from history, and we were history, so it had come from us. I told my artist friends who courted it not to suffer on purpose, not to fall in love with sadness, because it would be naturally theirs without assistance. I had sad stories of my own, but they made me quiet the way my parents' failures once did. Nobody's business but our own. And besides, what was left to say these days when the unspeakable was out there being spoken exhausting all sympathy. Yet, feeling it, how difficult to keep the face's curtains closed. She left, he left, they died, the heart rising into the mouth and eyes, everything so basic, so unhistorical at such times. And then, too, the woes of others would get in. But mostly I was inured and out to make a decent buck or in pursuit of some slippery pleasure that was sadness disguised. I found it, it found me. Oh, my artist friends, give it up. Just mix your paints, stroke. The strokes unmistakably will be yours. And Sweetness by Stephen Dunn. Just when it has seemed I couldn't bear one more friend, waking with a tumour, one more maniac with a perfect reason, often a sweetness has come and changed nothing in the world except the way I stumbled through it, for a while lost in the ignorance of loving someone or something. The world shrunk to mouth size, hand size, and never seeming small. I acknowledge there is no sweetness that doesn't leave a stain, no sweetness that's ever sufficiently sweet. Tonight a friend called to say his lover was killed in a car he was driving. His voice was low and guttural. He repeated what he needed to repeat. I repeated the 1 or 2 words we have for such grief, until we were speaking only in tones. Often a sweetness comes as if on loan, stays just long enough to make sense of what it means to be alive, then returns to its dark source. As for me, I don't care where it's been or what bitter road it's travelled to come so far, to taste so good. Orpheus and Eurydice. Hymen, the god of the marriage feast, in his robes of saffron, flew from Crete through the measureless sky to the land of the Thracian Cicones. Orpheus was calling the god to his wedding, though all to no purpose. The god attended, for sure, but the ritual words, the joyful faces and omens of favour were sadly missing. Even the torch in his hand kept sputtering smoke, brought tears to the eyes but never ignited, however strongly he waved it. The outcome was even worse than foreshadowed. The newly-wed bride, while taking a stroll through the grass with her band of attendant naiads, suddenly fell down dead, with the fangs of a snake in her ankle. When Orpheus, the Thracian bard, had indulged his grief to the full in the air above, he felt he must also appeal to the shades, and dared to descend to the river Styx through the Tanarian gateway, making his way through the shadowy tribes and the ghosts of the buried. He came to Proserpina, throned beside the Lord of the Shadows, who rules that dismal domain, and plucking the strings of his lyre, he began, "You powers divine of the subterranean kingdom, where all of mortal creation must one day sink to our doom, if you will give me permission to tell you the truth unvarnished by shifty pretenses, I've not come down to explore the murky regions of Tartarus, nor to enchain the 3-headed monster Medusa bore, the dog whose coat is bristling with adders. I'm here in search of my wife, cut off in the years of her youth when a viper she trampled discharged its venom inside her ankle. I'd hoped to be able to bear my loss and confess that I tried, but love was too strong. That God is well known in the world above, and I wonder whether you know him here. I divine that you do. If rumour has not invented the tale of that old abduction, you too are united by love. In the name of these confines of fear, in the name of this vast abyss and your realm of infinite silence, I, Orpheus, implore you, unravel the web of my dear Eurydice's early passing. We all are destined for you. We may tarry a little, but sooner or later we speed to our one habitation. This is the place that we are all bound for, our final dwelling, and yours is the longest reign that the human race must endure. Eurydice too, with her due of years has been ripely completed, shall own your sway. Till then I beg you to let me enjoy her. If fate forbids you to show my wife any mercy, I'll never return from Hades myself. You may joy in the deaths of us both. As Orpheus pleaded his cause, enhancing his words with his music, he moved the bloodless spirits to tears. For a moment, Daedalus ceased to clutch the fleeting pool. Ixion's wheel was spellbound, and vultures halted their pecking at Tityos' liver. The Daenads dropped their urns, and Sisyphus sat on his boulder. The Furies' hearts were assuaged by the song, and the story goes that they wept real tears for the very first time. The king and queen of the world below forbore to refuse such a moving appeal, and they summoned Eurydice, leaving the rest of the ghosts who had newly arrived. She slowly trailed along on her wounded ankle. Orpheus was told he could lead her away on one condition: to walk in front and never look back until he had left the Vale of Avernus, or else the concession would count for nothing. In deadly silence, the two of them followed the upward slope. The track was steep. It was dark and shrouded in thick black mist. Not far to go now, the exit to earth and the light was ahead. But Orpheus was frightened. His love was falling behind. He was desperate to see her. He turned, and at once she sank back into the dark. She stretched out her arms to him, struggled to feel his hands on her own, but all she was able to catch, poor soul, was the yielding air. And now, as she died for the second time, she never complained that her husband had failed her. What could she complain of, except that he'd loved her? It's very generous telling, isn't it? She only uttered her last farewell, so faintly he hardly could hear it. And then she was swept once more to the land of the shadows. Robbed of his wife all over again, poor Orpheus was stunned, like the terrified person who once caught sight of the three-headed hellhound, Cerberus, chained by the middle neck, and whose fear never left him until his nature had changed and the stone crept over his body. Or poor Lethea, transformed to stone by her pride in her beauty, whose husband Olenus took her offence on himself and hoped to be changed in her place. Two hearts that once were united in love, and now are separate rocks on the stony heights of Mount Ida. Orpheus wanted to cross the Styx for a second time, but his pleas were in vain, and the ferryman pushed him away from the bank. So he sat there in rags for a week, without eating a morsel of food. His anguish, his grief, and his tears were all that kept him alive. Cursing the gods of the dark for their cruel unkindness, he finally took himself back to Rhodope's heights and to windswept Haemus. 3 years went by, with the sun god traversing watery Pisces to mark their ending. Orpheus now would have nothing to do with love of women, perhaps because of his fortune in love, or he may have plighted his troth forever. But scores of women were burning to sleep with the bard, and he suffered the pain. They suffered the pain of rejection. Orpheus even started the practice among the Thracian tribes of turning for love to immature males and of plucking a flower of a boy's brief spring before he has come to his manhood. The love song of J. Alfred Prufrock. Let us go then, you and I, when the evening is spread out against the sky like a patient etherized upon a table. Let us go through certain half-deserted streets, the muttering retreats of restless nights in one-night cheap hotels, the sawdust restaurants with oyster shells, streets that follow like a tedious argument of insidious intent to lead you to an overwhelming question. Oh, do not ask, what is it? Let us go and make our visit. In the room, the women come and go, talking of Michelangelo. The yellow fog that rubs its back upon the window panes, the yellow smoke that rubs its muzzle on the window panes, licked its tongue into the corners of the evening, lingered upon the pools that stand in drains, let fall upon its back the soot that falls from chimneys, slipped by the terrace, made a sudden leap, and seeing that it was a soft October night, curled once around about the house and fell asleep. And indeed there will be time for the yellow smoke that slides along the street, rubbing its back upon the window panes. There will be time. There will be time to prepare a face to meet the faces that you meet. There will be time to murder and create, and time for all the works and days of hands that lift and drop a question on your plate. Time for you and time for me. And time yet for 100 indecisions and for 100 visions and revisions before the taking of a toast and tea. In the room the women come and go, talking of Michelangelo. And indeed there will be time to wonder, do I dare? And do I dare? Time to turn back and descend the stair with a bald spot in the middle of my hair. They will say how his hair is growing thin. My morning coat, my collar mounting firmly to the chin, my necktie rich and modest, but asserted by a simple pin. They will say, but how his arms and legs are thin. Do I dare disturb the universe? In a minute there is time for decisions and revisions that a minute will reverse. For I have known them all already, known them all, have known the evenings, mornings, afternoons. I have measured out my life in coffee spoons. I know the voices dying with a dying fall beneath the music from a farther room. So how should I presume? And I have known the eyes already, known them all, the eyes that fix you in a formulated phrase. And when I am formulated, sprawling on a pin, when I am pinned and wriggling on the wall, then how should I begin to spit out all the butt ends of my days and ways? And how should I presume? And I have known the arms already, known them all, arms that are braceleted and white and bare, but in the lamplight downed with light brown hair. Is it perfume from a dress that makes me so digress? Arms that lie along a table or wrap about a shawl. And should I then presume? And how should I begin? Shall I say, I have gone at dusk through narrow streets and watched the smoke that rises from the pipes of lonely men in shirt sleeves leaning out of windows? I should have been a pair of ragged claws scuttling across the floors of silent seas. And the afternoon, the evening, sleeps so peacefully, smoothed by long fingers, asleep, tired, or it malingers, stretched on the floor, here beside you and me. Should I, after tea and cakes and ices, have the strength to force the moment to its crisis? But though I have wept and fasted, wept and prayed, though I have seen my head, grown slightly bald, brought in upon a platter, I am no prophet, and here's no great matter. I have seen the moment of my greatness flicker. I have seen the eternal footman hold my coat and snicker, and in short, I was afraid. And would it have been worth it, after all, after the cups, the marmalade, the tea, among the porcelain, among some talk of you and me, would it have been worthwhile to have bitten off the matter with a smile? To have squeezed the universe into a ball, to roll it towards some overwhelming question, to say, I am Lazarus, come from the dead, come back to tell you all, I shall tell you all. If one, settling a pillow by her head, should say, "That is not what I meant at all. That is not it at all." And would it have been worth it after all? Would it have been worthwhile after the sunsets and the dooryards and the sprinkled streets, after the novels, after the teacups, after the skirts that trail along the floor, and this, and so much more? It is impossible to say just what I mean. But as if a magic lantern threw the nerves in patterns on a screen, would it have been worthwhile if one, settling a pillow or throwing off a shawl and turning toward the window, should say, "That is not it at all. That is not what I meant at all"? No, I am not Prince Hamlet, nor was meant to be. I am an attendant lord, one that will do to swell a progress, start a scene or two, advise the prince, no doubt, an easy tool. Deferential, glad to be of use. Politic, cautious, and meticulous, full of high sentence, but a bit obtuse. At times, indeed, almost ridiculous, almost at times the fool. I grow old. I grow old. I shall wear the bottoms of my trousers rolled. Shall I part my hair behind? Do I dare to eat a peach? I shall wear white flannel trousers and walk upon the beach. I have heard the mermaids singing each to each. I do not think that they will sing to me. I have seen them riding seaward on the waves, combing the white hair of the waves blown back, when the wind blows on the water, white and black. We have lingered in the chambers of the sea, by sea girls wreathed with seaweed red and brown, till human voices wake us, and we drown. Begin. Begin again to the summoning birds, to the sight of light at the window. Begin to the roar of morning traffic all along Pembroke Road. Every beginning is a promise born in light and dying in dark determination and exaltation of springtime, flowering the way to work. Begin to the pageant of queuing girls, the arrogant loneliness of swans in the canal bridges, linking the past and future, old friends passing through with us still. Begin to the loneliness that cannot end, since it perhaps is what makes us begin. Begin to wonder at unknown faces, at crying birds in the sudden rain, at branches stark in the willing sunlight, at seagulls foraging for bread, at couples sharing a sunny secret, alone together while making good. Though we live in a world that dreams of ending, that always seems about to give in, something that will not acknowledge conclusion, insists that we forever begin. Ezra Pound, and the days are not full enough. And the days are not full enough, and the nights are not full enough, and life slips by like a field mouse, not shaking the grass. This is Wilfred Owen's Futility. Move him into the sun. Gently its touch awoke him once, at home, whispering of fields unsown. Always it woke him, even in France, until this morning and this snow. If anything might rouse him now, the kind old sun will know. Think how it wakes the seeds, woke once the clays of a cold star. Our limbs, so dear achieved, our sides full nerved, still warm, too hard to stir. Was it for this the clay grew tall? Oh, what made fatuous sunbeams toil to break earth's sleep at all? James Joyce, a flower given to my daughter. Frail the white rose, and frail are her hands that gave, whose soul is sere and paler than time's one wave. Rose frail and fair, yet frailest, a wonder wild in gentle eyes, thou veilest, my blue-veined child. Keeping Quiet by Pablo Neruda. Now we will count to 12 and we will all keep still. For once on the face of the earth, let's not speak in any language. Let's stop for 1 second and not move our arms so much. It would be an exotic moment without rush, without engines. We would all be together in a sudden strangeness. Fisherman in the cold sea would not harm whales, and the man, gathering salt, would look at his hurt hands. Those who prepare green wars, wars with gas, wars with fire, victory with no survivors, would put on clean clothes and walk about with their brothers in the shade, doing nothing. What I want should not be confused with total inactivity. Life is what it is about. I want no truck with death. If we were not so single-minded about keeping our lives moving and for once could do nothing, perhaps a huge silence might interrupt this sadness of never understanding ourselves and of threatening ourselves with death. Perhaps the earth can teach us, as when everything seems dead and later proves to be alive. And now I'll count up to 12 and you keep quiet and I will go. If you're familiar with I Too by Langston Hughes. I too sing America. I am the Dharker brother. They send me to eat in the kitchen when company comes, but I laugh and eat well and grow strong. Tomorrow I'll be at the table when company comes. Nobody'll dare say to me, eat in the kitchen then. Besides, they'll see how beautiful I am and be ashamed. I too am American. They'll say she must be from another country. When I can't comprehend why they're burning books or slashing paintings, when they can't bear to look at God's own nakedness, when they ban the film and gut the seats to stop the play, and I ask why, they just smile and say, she must be from another country. When I speak on the phone and the vowel sounds are off and the consonants are hard and they should be soft, they'll catch on at once, they'll pin it down, they'll explain it right away to their own satisfaction. They'll cluck their tongues and say, she must be from another country. When my mouth goes up instead of down, when I wear a tablecloth to go to town, when they suspect I'm black or hear I'm gay, they won't be surprised. They'll purse their lips and say, she must be from another country. When I eat up the olives and spit out the pits, when I yawn at the opera in the tragic bits, when I pee in the vineyard as if it were Bombay, flaunting my bare ass, covering my face, laughing through my hands, they'll turn away, shake their heads quite sadly. She doesn't know any better, they'll say. She must be from another country. Maybe there is a country where all of us live. All of us freaks who aren't able to give our loyalty to fat old fools, the crooks and thugs who wear the uniform that gives them the right to wave a flag, puff out their chests, put their feet on our necks and break their own rules. But from where we are, it doesn't look like a country. It's more like the cracks that grow between borders, behind their backs. That's where I live, and I'll be happy to say, I never learned your customs. I don't remember your language or know your ways. I must be from another country. When you are old and grey and full of sleep and nodding by the fire, take down this book and slowly read the dream of the soft look your eyes had once and of their shadows deep. How many loved your moments of glad grace and loved your beauty with loves false or true. But one man loved the pilgrim soul in you and loved the sorrows of your changing face, and bending down beside the glowing bars, murmur a little sadly how love fled and paced upon the mountains overhead and hid his face amid a crowd of stars. On the Bus by Stephen James Smith. I was on the bus, and this sunset, it screamed at me, reminding me of life, reminding me to shine. And I wanted to tell someone to look at it and gaze at it with me, but I paused, and the view, it had passed, confiscated by concrete, stolen by gravity. So I phoned a friend on a 50-50 chance that they would see my end, and I sent my friend a picture of it verbally. It was like a neon sign, I said. No, that is shit. It was like someone had gotten all the flamingos and pureed them, and concrete clouds, dark and dull, had puke-pulped guts glazed on their undersides and drips that drop into my eyes. I speak no lies, but the centre, the core, it was like fire. Yes, okay, I know that the sun is fire, but it was really like fire that was friendly and kind to touch, and that sunset, it touched me. So let it touch you, and accept love, and accept that things, they are intended to be given like beauty or a heart or life, but accept love. St. Kevin and the Blackbird. And then there was St. Kevin and the Blackbird. The saint is kneeling, arms stretched out inside his cell, but the cell is narrow, so one upturned palm is out the window, stiff as a crossbeam, when a blackbird lands and lays in it and settles down to nest. Kevin feels the warm eggs, the small breast, the tucked neat head and claws, and finding himself linked into the network of eternal life, is moved to pity. Now he must hold his hand like a branch out in the sun and rain for weeks until the young are hatched and fledged and flown. And since the whole thing's imagined anyhow, imagine being Kevin. Which is he? Self-forgetful or in agony all the time? From the neck on out down through his hurting forearms. Are his fingers sleeping? Does he still feel his knees, or has the shut-eyed blank of under-earth crept up through him? Is there distance in his head? Alone and mirrored clear in love's deep river, to labour and not to seek reward, he prays. A prayer his body makes entirely, for he has forgotten self, forgotten bird, and on the river bank, forgotten the river's name. Sweeney astray. It was the end of the harvest season, and Sweeney heard a hunting call from a company in the skirts of the wood. This will be the outcry of the wee villain. Come to kill me, he said. I slew their king at Moira, and this host is out to avenge him. He heard the stag bellowing, and he made a poem in which he praised aloud all the trees of Ireland and rehearsed some of his own hardships and sorrows, saying, the bushy, leafy oak tree is highest in the wood. The forking shoots of hazel hide sweet hazelnuts. The alder is my darling, all thornless in the gap, some milk of human kindness coursing in its sap. The blackthorn is a jaggy creel, stippled with dark sloes, green watercress in patch on wells where the drinking blackbird goes. Sweetest of the leafy stalks, the vetches strew the pathway. The oyster grass is my delight, and the wild strawberry. Low-set clumps of apple trees drum down fruit when shaken. Scarlet berries clot like blood on mountain rowan. Briars curl in sideways, arch a stickleback, draw blood and curl up innocent to sneak the next attack. The yew tree in each churchyard wraps night in its dark hood. Ivy is a shadowy genius of the wood. Holly rears its windbreak, a door in winter's face. Lifeblood on a spear shaft darkens the grain of ash. Birch tree, smooth and blessed, delicious to the breeze. High twigs plait and crown it, the queen of trees. The aspen pales and whispers, hesitates. 1,000 frightened scuts race in its leaves. But what disturbs me most in the leafy wood is the to and fro of an oak rod. Touched by an Angel, by Maya Angelou. We, unaccustomed to courage, exiles from delight, live coiled in shells of loneliness until love leaves its high holy temple and comes into our sight to liberate us from life. Love arrives, and in its train come ecstasies, old memories of pleasure, ancient histories of pain. Yet if we are bold, love strikes away the chains of fear from our souls. We are weaned from our timidity in the flush of love's light. We dare be brave, and suddenly we see that love costs all we are and will ever be. Yet it is only love which sets us free. Supper. You made crusty bread rolls filled with chunks of brie and minced garlic drizzled with olive oil, and baked them until the brie was bubbly, and we ate them lovingly, our legs coiled together under the table, and salmon with dill and lemon and whole wheat couscous, baked with garlic and fresh ginger, and a hill of green beans and carrots roasted with honey and tofu. It was beautiful, the candles, the linen, the silver, the sun shining down on our northern street, me with my hand on your leg, you, my lover, in your jeans and green t-shirt and beautiful bare feet. How simple life is. We buy a fish, we are fed. We sit close to each other, we talk, and then we go to bed. And it is Sonnet 94. If I die, survive me with such a pure force, you make the pallor and the coldness rage. Flash your indelible eyes from south to south, from sun to sun, till your mouth sings like a guitar. I don't want your laugh or your footsteps to waver. I don't want my legacy of happiness to die. Don't call to my breast. I'm not there. Live in my absence, as in a house. Absence is such a large house that you'll walk through the walls, hang pictures in sheer air. Absence is such a transparent house that even being dead, I will see you there. And if you suffer, love, I'll die a second time. Ash Wednesday. Because I do not hope to turn again, because I do not hope to turn, desiring this man's gift and that man's scope, I no longer strive towards such things. Why should the aged eagle stretch its wings? Why should I mourn the vanished power of the usual rain? Because I do not hope to know again the infirm glory of the positive hour, because I do not think, because I know I shall not know the one veritable transitory power, because I cannot drink there where trees flower and springs flow, for there is nothing again. Because I know that time is always time, and place is always and only place, and what is actual only for one time and only for one place. I rejoice that things are as they are, and I renounce the blessed face and renounce the voice, because I cannot hope to turn again. Consequently, I rejoice having to construct something upon which to rejoice, and pray to God to have mercy upon us. And I pray that I may forget these matters, that with myself I too much discuss, too much explain, because I do not hope to turn again. Let these words answer for what is done, not to be done again. May the judgment not be too heavy upon us, because these wings are no longer wings to fly, but merely vans to beat the air which is now thoroughly small and dry, smaller and drier than the will. Teach us to care and not to care. Teach us to sit still. Pray for us sinners, now and at the hour of our death. Pray for us now and at the hour of our death. And this is Ovid, of course, the Roman poet. First to be born was the golden age. Of its own free will, without laws or enforcement, it did what was right, and trust prevailed. Punishment held no terrors, No threatening edicts were published in tablets of bronze, secured with none to defend them. The crowd never pleaded or cowered in fear in front of their stern-faced judges. No pine tree had yet been felled from its home on the mountains and come down into the flowing waves for journeys to lands afar. Mortals were careful and never forsook the shores of their homeland. No cities were yet ringed round with deep, precipitous earthworks. Long, straight trumpets and curved bronze horns never summoned to battle. Swords were not carried, nor helmets worn. No need for armies, but nations were free to practice the gentle arts of peace. The earth was equally free and at rest, untouched by the hoe, unscathed by the ploughshare, supplying all needs from its natural resources. Content to enjoy the food that required no painful producing, men simply gathered arbutus fruit and mountain strawberries, cornel cherries and blackberries plucked from the prickly bramble. Acorns too, which they found at the foot of the spreading oak tree. Spring was the only season. Flowers which had never been planted were kissed into life by the warming breath of the gentle zephyrs. And soon the earth, untilled by the plough, was yielding her fruits, and without renewal the fields grew white with the swelling corn blades. Rivers of milk and rivers of nectar flowed in abundance, and yellow honey distilled like dew from the leaves of the ilex. When Saturn was cast into murky Tartarus, Jupiter seized the throne of the universe. Now there followed the age of silver, meaner than gold, but higher in value than tawny bronze. Gentle spring was no longer allowed to continue unbroken. The king of the gods divided the year into 4 new seasons: summer, changeable autumn, winter, and only a short spring. The sky for the first time burned and glowed with a dry, white heat, and the blasts of the wild winds froze the rain into hanging icicles. People now took shelter in houses. Their homes hitherto had been caves, dense thickets or brushwood fastened together with bark. For the first time also, the corn was sown in long ploughed furrows, and oxen groaned beneath the weight of the heavy yoke. A third age followed the Silver Age, the Bronze generation. Crueler by nature, more ready to take up menacing weapons, but still not vile to the core. The final age was iron. The floodgates opened, and all the forces of evil invaded a breed of inferior metal. Loyalty, truth, and conscience went into exile, their throne usurped by guile and deception, treacherous plots, brute force, and a criminal lust for possession. Sailors spread their sails to the winds they had tempted so rarely before, and the keels of pine that had formerly stood stock still on the mountain slopes presumptuously bobbed in the alien ocean. The land which had been as common to all as the air or the sunlight was now marked out with the boundary lines of the wary surveyor. The affluent earth was not only pressed for the crops and the food that it owed. Men also found their way to its very bowels, and the wealth which the god had hidden away in the home of the ghosts by the Styx was mined and dug out as a further incitement to wickedness. Now, dangerous iron and gold, more dangerous even than iron, had emerged. Grim War appeared, who uses both in his battles, and brandishing his clashing weapons in hands bespattered with slaughter. Men throve on their thefts. No guest was safe from his host, no father secure with his daughter's husband. Love between brothers was found, but seldom. Men and their wives would long for each other's demise. Wicked stepmothers brewed their potions of deadly wolfsbane. Sons would cast their father's horoscopes prematurely. All duty to gods and to men lay vanquished, and Justice, the maiden, was last of the heavenly throng to abandon the blood-drenched earth. The spirit is too blunt an instrument. And Stevenson. The spirit is too blunt an instrument to have made this baby. Nothing so unskillful as human passions could have managed the intricate exacting particulars, the tiny blind bones with their manipulating tendons, the knee and the knuckle bones, the resilient fine meshings of ganglia and vertebrae in the chain of the difficult spine. Observe the distinct eyelashes and sharp crescent fingernails, the shell-like complexity of the ear, with its firm involutions concentric in miniature to the minute ossicles. Imagine the infinitesimal capillaries, the flawless connections of the lungs, the invisible neural filaments through which the completed body always answers to the brain. Then name any passion or sentiment possessed of the simplest accuracy. No desire or affection could have done with practice what habit has done perfectly, indifferently, through the body's ignorant precision. It is left to the vagaries of the mind to invent love and despair and anxiety and their pain. This is from Katie Mack's The End of Everything, Astrophysically Speaking, and it is a piece called The Slow Fade to Black. The assertion that dark energy ruins everything is not an overstatement. A universe whose expansion is accelerating is paradoxically one in which the influence exerted by the things in it is shrinking. Distant galaxies being dragged out of the Hubble radius, that is what we can see with the Hubble telescope, by cosmic expansion, will become lost to us. Galaxies whose distant past we can see now will slowly fade into darkness, like ancient decaying photographs. In our own cosmic neighbourhood, after the Milky Way and Andromeda merge, our little local group of galaxies will become more and more isolated, surrounded by darkness and the dying primordial light. All across the cosmos, invisible to us, other groups and clusters of galaxies will merge to form giant elliptical clumps of stars, burning brightly in the initial violence of the collisions, but fading eventually to embers, whose glow will never reach beyond their pool of expanding, emptying space. Eventually, each new dying supergalaxy will be utterly alone. Nothing will again approach to bring in a fresh supply of gas to fuel new stars. The stars already shining will burn out, exploding as supernovae, or, more often, sloughing off outer layers to become slow-burning relics, gradually cooling for billions or trillions of years. Black holes will grow for some time. Some will engulf galaxies worth of dead stellar remnants. Some will stall in their growth, with no new matter approaching close enough to be consumed. When the stars have all faded to darkness, the ultimate decay sets in. Black holes begin to evaporate. It was originally thought that black holes were eternal, capable of growing by consuming other matter, but incapable of ever losing any mass. It makes sense that something defined by the fact that not even light can escape it would be a one-way, bottomless pit. But Stephen Hawking calculated in the 1970s that quantum effects on a black hole's horizon cause it to glow faintly. The glow carries away energy, or equivalently, mass, and the black hole shrinks. This process goes slowly at first, and then faster and brighter and hotter, until a final explosion and disappearance at the end. Even the supermassive black holes at the centres of galaxies, with masses millions or billions of times that of the Sun, are destined to eventually fade and disappear. Ordinary matter, the stuff making up stars and planets and gas and dust, suffers a similar, if less dramatic fate. Most particles of matter are known to be, at some level, unstable. If left alone long enough, they decay into other things, dropping in mass and energy in the process. A neutron, for example, will eventually decay into a proton, an electron, and an anti-neutrino. While we've never seen a proton decay experimentally, we have reason to believe that that can happen too if you're willing to wait something like 10 to the power of 33 years. At that point, even hydrogen atoms, which have been persisting as the most numerous atoms in the universe since the Big Bang itself, will finally cease to be. The distant future of a universe governed by dark energy, in the form of a cosmological constant, is one of darkness, isolation, emptiness, and decay. But this slow fade is just the beginning of the ultimate end, the heat death. The name heat death might sound like a misnomer for a state of the cosmos that is colder and darker than anything else in the history of creation. But in this case, the term heat, quote heat, is a technical physics term, not meaning warmth, but rather disordered motion of particles or energy. And it's not the death of heat, but a death by heat. It's the disorder in particular that kills us, which is why we need to take a moment to talk about entropy. Entropy is perhaps one of the most essential, versatile, and tragically obscure topics in all of science. It shows up everywhere, not just in the physics of everything from balloons to black holes, but also computer science, statistics, and even economics and neuroscience. Entropy is usually explained in terms of disorder. The more disordered a system, the higher its entropy. A pile of puzzle pieces has higher entropy than a completed puzzle. A scrambled egg has higher entropy than an intact one. In cases where disorder is not an immediately obvious property, you can think of entropy as a measure of how free or unconstrained the elements of the system are. To be concrete, a completed puzzle has a low entropy because there's only one way for all the pieces to be arranged to make the puzzles whole, whereas a pile of pieces can be in any number of configurations and still successfully constitute a pile. Though it's not so obvious in these examples, higher entropy is also linked to higher temperature. This makes sense if you think of a difference between a block of ice and a cloud of steam. In order to be ice, the water molecules have to be arranged in a crystal structure, whereas the particles in steam are free to move around in 3 dimensions. But even just cooling the steam a bit reduces its entropy because the particles are moving less. They're more constrained or less disordered. The important thing about entropy in cosmic terms is that over time, it goes up. The second law of thermodynamics states that in any isolated system, the total entropy can only increase, not decrease. In other words, order does not spontaneously appear out of nowhere. And if you leave something alone long enough, it will inevitably decay into disorder. Isn't this great? Anyone who has tried to keep their desk tidy will understand this. The universe's most intuitive and maddening natural law. Whether or not the universe itself counts as an isolated system can be a matter of discussion, but taking it to be one leads us to the conclusion that the future of the cosmos is one of inevitably increasing disarray and decay. In fact, the second law is considered to be so inescapable and fundamental, it's been blamed for the passage of time itself. The laws of physics generally have no regard for the direction of time. In most situations, reversing the equations in time make no difference to the physics. The only part of physics that seems to care at all about which direction time is going is entropy. In fact, it's possible that the only reason we can remember the past and not the future is that, quote, things can only get worse, is a truth so universal that it shapes reality as we know it. Pablo Neruda, 17. I don't love you as if you were a rose of salt, topaz, or arrow of carnations that propagate fire. I love you as one loves certain obscure things, secretly, between the shadow and the soul. I love you as the plant that doesn't bloom, but carries the light of those flowers hidden within itself. And thanks to your love, the tight aroma that arose from the earth lives dimly in my body. I love you without knowing how, or when, or from where. I love you directly without problems or pride. I love you like this because I don't know any other way to love, except in this form in which I am not, nor are you. so close that your hand upon my chest is mine, so close that your eyes close with my dreams. On love. Then said Almitra, speak to us of love. And he raised his head and looked upon the people, and there fell a stillness upon them. And with a great voice he said, when love beckons to you, follow him. Though his ways are hard and steep, and when his wings enfold you, yield to him, though the sword hidden among his pinions may wound you. And when he speaks to you, believe in him, though his voice may shatter your dreams, as the north wind lays waste to the garden. For even as love crowns you, so shall he crucify you. Even as he is for your growth, so is he for your pruning. Even as he ascends to your height and caresses your tenderest branches that quiver in the sun, so shall he descend to your roots and shake them in their clinging to the earth. Like sheaves of corn he gathers you unto himself. He threshes you to make you naked. He sifts you to free you from your husks. He grinds you to whiteness. He kneads you until you are pliant, and then he assigns you to his sacred fire, that you may become sacred bread for God's sacred feast. All these things shall love do unto you, that you may know the secret of your heart, and in that knowledge become a fragment of life's heart. But if in your fear you would seek only love's peace and only love's pleasure, then it is better for you that you cover your nakedness and pass out of love's threshing floor into the seasonless world, where you shall laugh, but not all of your laughter, and weep, but not all of your tears. Love gives naught but itself, and takes naught but from itself. Love possesses not, nor would it be possessed. For love is sufficient unto love. When you love, you should not say, God is in my heart, but rather, I am in the heart of God. And think not you can direct the course of love, for love, if it finds you worthy, directs your course. Love has no other desire but to fulfill itself. But if you love, and must needs have desires, let these be your desires: to melt and be like a running brook that sings its melody to the night, to know the pain of too much tenderness, to be wounded by your own understanding of love, and to bleed willingly and joyfully, to wake at dawn with a winged heart and give thanks for another day of loving, to rest at the noon hour and meditate love's ecstasy, to return home at eventide with gratitude, and then to sleep with a prayer for the beloved in your heart and a song of praise upon your lips. True love. In the middle of the night, when we get up after making love, we look at each other in complete friendship. We know so fully what the other has been doing, bound to each other like mountaineers coming down from a mountain. Bound with the tie of the delivery room, we wander down the hall to the bathroom. I can hardly walk. I wobble through the granular, shadowless air. I know where you are with my eyes closed. We are bound to each other with huge invisible threads, our sexes muted, exhausted, crushed, the whole body a sex. Surely this is the most blessed time of my life. Our children asleep in their beds, each fate like a vein of abiding mineral not discovered yet. I sit on the toilet in the night. You are somewhere in the room. I open the window and snow has fallen in a steep drift against the pane, a wall of cold crystals, silent and glistening. I quietly call to you, and you come and hold my hand, and I say, I cannot see beyond it. I cannot see beyond it. Rita Ann Higgins. The did you come yets of the Western world. When he says to you, You look so beautiful, you smell so nice, how I've missed you, and did you come yet? It means nothing, and he is smaller than a mouse's fart. Don't listen to him. Go to Anodown Pier with your father's rod. Don't necessarily hold out for the biggest one. Oftentimes the biggest ones are the smallest in the end. Bring them all home, but not together. One by one is the trick. Avoid red herrings and scandal. Maybe you could take 2 on the shortest day of the year. Time is the cheater here, not you. So don't worry. Many will bite the usual bait. They will talk their slippery way through fine clothes and expensive perfume, fishing up your independence. These are the did-you-come-yets of the Western world, the feather and fin rufflers. Pity for them, they have no wisdom. Others will bite at any bait, maggot, suspender, or dead worm. Throw them to the sharks. In time, one will crawl out from under Thailand. Although drowning, he will say, "Woman, I am terrified. Why is the house shaking?" And you'll know he's the one. A poem by Derek Mahan. Everything is going to be all right. How should I not be glad to contemplate the clouds clearing beyond the dormer window and a high tide reflected on the ceiling? There will be dying, but there is no need to go into that. The lines flow from the hand unbidden and the hidden source. The sun rises in spite of everything. I lie here in a riot of sunlight, watching the daybreak and the clouds flying. Everything is going to be all right. So Prayer by Faisal Muhyiddin. You cleanse the uncovered regions of your body, then stand at the foot of prayer mats, facing the Qibla. Unfasten your cluttered mind from the tangible hold of secular bow down before the cascading glow of God's mercy. Submit to a centripetal course towards the gates of a more perfect emptiness. Here now you can plunge into the most secluded chamber of the soul, commune with your share of the universe's initial burst of light, eternal light housed within the lamp of mystery, waiting to be beheld 5 times a day. How to be alone. Podagotuma. It all begins with knowing nothing lasts forever. So you might as well start packing now. In the meantime, practice being alive. There will be a party where you'll feel like nobody's paying you attention, where attention's all you'll get. What you need to do is to remember to talk to yourself between these parties. And again, there will be a day, a decade, where you won't fit in with your body, even though you're in the only body you're in. You need to control your habit of forgetting to breathe. Remember when you were younger and you practiced kissing on your arm? You were onto something then. Sometimes harm knows its own healing. Comfort knows its own intelligence. Kindness too. It needs no reason. There is a you telling you another story of you. Listen to her. Where do you feel anxiety in your body? The chest? The fist? The dream before waking? The head that feels like it's at the top of the swing, or the clutch of a gut like falling and falling and falling? It knows something. You're dying. Try to stay alive. For now, touch yourself. I'm serious. Touch yourself. Take your hand and place your hand someplace upon your body and listen to the community of madness that you are. You are such an interesting conversation. You belong here. Dublin, you are. Dublin, you are grey brick upon brick, full of tarmac and hipster pricks. Just face it, all other places pale in comparison. You are more than some former Saxon garrison. Dublin, your warmth came too late for John Corrie. Dublin, are you even sorry? Dublin, you are divided by more than the Liffey. You said yes to equality. And it's about blooming time. Yet Dublin, you always proclaimed to cherish all. Dublin, your panties are on Capel Street, compromising any papal feats. Dublin, Jedward, awkward. Dublin, you are more than a settlement on the Poddle. But Dublin, what's the crack with Coddle? It's shite, why don't we just admit it? Dublin, you brought back Sam again, but Dublin, when did you go from the clash of the ash to exchanging gold for cash? Dublin, Difflin, Iblana, Bolya, Haclea, and 180 other tongues your citizens are using to name you. So Céad Míle Fáilte to all. Dublin, where power is held by too few in the Dáil. Dublin, when will you revolt again? 1988 wasn't your true millennium, despite the 50p's and milk bottles. Dublin, you're mine, but I'm happy to share you. Dublin, from RTE, TCD, UCD, U2, SIP, TU, IFSC, the acrimonious Temple Bar STDs, ODs and OMGs, no longer the second city, yet you play second fiddle to Google and Guinness, to Facebook and unsociable twits. Dublin, look at yourself. Dublin, your tower blocks and tenements are an excuse for a solution. Dublin, come here till I tell you. You can be more than rapid dirt birds and banjacks bowsies. Alright, story bud, and yeah, sure, it's all good. Jesus, that's scaldy. Why go baldy? I'm Ixira and Delira. Dublin, I cry for you. Dublin, you're a tough bastard, yet full of the softness of all the people on your streets. Margaret Dunn dancing on O'Connell Street, the Diceman Tom McGinty miming on Grafton Street, Pat Inglesby with his poems on Westmoreland Street, and your Mollys, Malone, Ivors and Bloom, the Daily Sally Sandy Mounts, from the Gospel of Kelly, Drew, McKenna and Sheehan, to Borstal boys like Brendan Behan, two gallants rejoicing, to Evelyn looking out to sea, snow falling slowly on the dead in Glasnevin, Glenn and Marquita once strolling, to Christy Brown wilfully controlling a foot, to paint pictures and poems to your heroines, Brenda Fricker, the city's mother, Maureen O'Hara, an enchanting other. Dublin, you are boom and bust, running wild and swift. Dublin, can I trust you? Dublin, your true blue is Harry Clark's cobalt. Dublin, from a thin Lizzie, Dicey Riley, to a floozy in a jacuzzi, God-fearing. Dublin, shooting down Veronica Guerin. Dublin, you are Bang Bang, 40 Coats, Zosimus, a blind street poet. Dublin, you are all of us, and all who are yet to come. So let's go to the grave diggers and have a pint. Dublin, remember Stardust and all your waltzing lovers. Dublin, Big Jim's arms are outstretched to a risen people. Yet are we under the thumb again? Dublin, your GPO columns are scarred from the crackle of gunshots. Dublin, your CCTV will never yield your essence like the shots of Arthur Field's man on bridge. You are the Poolbeg Towers. You are the poor showers begging on Bachelor's Walk. Dublin, you're all talk, yet you have my attention. From Robbie Keane to Paula Meehan, Dublin's calling, ooh ah Paul McGrath, while some say up the Ra. Dublin, bridging caps with Joyce and Beckett, and finally to Rosie Hackett. Dublin, Paddy Finnegan was forced to sell the big issue on your streets, while Daffodil Mulligan was played to baron beats. Dublin, you say delish. Dublin, you are full of Polish and Brazilians speaking Portuguese, and now the Chinese have turned Parnell Street into Chinatown. Dublin, don't let them down. Dublin, don't forget no blacks, no dogs, no Irish. Dublin, perish the thought of you being racist. Dublin, Cuchulainn has fled the GPO and heading for Monto. Dublin, your bay embraces despite the Sellafield Sea, and your mountains frame all your natural beauty. Dublin, a wailing banshee stricken with TB. Dublin, you're European, but could be Craggy Island in disguise. Gabriel Conroy is heading west because of an epiphany. Just saying, Dublin, you only painted your post boxes green. Is the Abbey doing all you dreamed? Dublin, you are notorious for clampers, senators and seagulls, to Celtic tiger and septic tanks, to singing high kings and rampaging Vikings. Dublin, come here. Take me for a Teddy's and a romantic stroll down the pier. Dublin, you are a dancing place, a sprawling space of villages and many faces on the edge of an island that's eroded by the Atlantic, battling with being romanticised. Dublin, are you dynamic, struggling with identity, changing? For us, Dublin, don't be scared to change. Don't be scared, we're with you always. Dublin, my friend, my home. Mentioned 50 times in this poem. We live in you, my city, Machri. I love you most of the time. You see, Dublin, you are me. Seed by Paula Meehan. The first warm day of spring, and I step out into the garden from the gloom and finding some forgotten lupins I'd sown from seed last autumn, holding in their fingers a raindrop, each like a peace offering or a promise. I am suddenly grateful and would offer a prayer if I believed in God. But not believing, I bless the power of seed, its casual, useful persistence, and bless the power of sun, its conspiracy with the underground, and thank my stars the winter's ended.